Here comes Ms. Berry, and we will get started. It's already being recorded, is that right, Jay?
I started that about 3 seconds ago.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. This is a special board meeting of the Santa Ynez Community Service District, Wednesday, June 2nd at 5:30 p.m. So,
Are Wendy's recording? Is your recording right on? Your recording.
yes, I called the meeting to order at 5:30, but just to make sure it's being recorded for you. And it appears everyone is here, but you can go ahead and do an official roll call for us, please.
Director Beer,
Here.
Mayor Mansell,
Here.
Director Redfern,
Here.
Director Jones,
Here.
Director Ian.
Here.
Okay, let us stand for the pledge. Put your hand over your heart. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. This is the portion of the meeting where anyone in the public can address the board on items related to our district, but not on the agenda tonight. Does anyone have anything that's not agendized that they would like to comment on before we move to the topics? Okay, and I do not, oh, Gary, yes.
I would like to thank you all for putting it on a Zoom, although it is very difficult to hear anybody talking other than usually yourself.
Part of that is probably where I'm sitting, and part of it is, you know, my nickname has been Malby at times.
We are trying to improve that as we,
Right.
you know.
I think you just need microphones over here.
Yeah.
Yes, and Jay Freeman.
So actually, I'm working on doing that, and this was last meeting, which you were remotely at. The audio cut out and then you disappeared. I assumed because yeah, what happened was is I left the remote control for the audio on the podium, and the speaker used his elbow and hit the mic and the mute button. And so that was the after that was fixed. I had some people remotely testing it. They were saying that as long as the person at the podium wasn't speaking quietly, which he did for a little while. Everyone was hearable except for that person occasionally, but usually. So
Yeah.
we're working.
Okay.
And I do appreciate the feedback. I have attended a couple of these meetings remotely and have the same problem. It's difficult to understand, but we are addressing it and getting better. But we welcome your feedback. Thank you. And I also like the way you delivered it. Okay, so we're going to move on now to the action items. And this meeting is essentially about Horizon Drive, the bids. And so we're going to take these things one at a time. And I'm going to turn it over to our general manager, Jose Acosta.
Good evening. First item on the agenda is to review and discuss Horizon Drive capacity charges, fees, and study, and also approve the CSDA financing terms as presented in the item attached for review. First off, I just want financial implications. The loan amount for the project will be approximately $1.3 million. That covers all costs from the bid, which came in just under $1 million, plus all costs associated with engineering, costs that we spent prior to the project, acquisition of easements throughout the project, and other associated costs for the entire project to be completed. The term limit for the loan would be for 20 years, and it's going to be financed through CSDA at an interest rate of 2.93%. So at the May 19th board meeting, the board did approve reaching out to Clayton Tuckville to complete the analysis for Horizon Drive capacity cost. And so Mr. Clayton is here this evening to discuss the terms of the loan and the repayment portion of the loan. And, again, the terms for the loan are included in here at $1.3 million for 20 years at an interest rate of 2.93%. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Tuckville. He'll review the slides that were attached for review and explain the capacity charge updates for Horizon Drive.
Well, good evening. It's a pleasure to be before the board once again.
As Jose mentioned, we did discuss most of this material at one of the previous board meetings. I'll try to go through this again to give you an update of what has transpired. Hopefully, those people who are listening have downloaded the packet and they have the copy of this presentation in front of them. There are essentially 4 pages to review. So let's look at page 1. As Jose mentioned, the now cost of the project is $1.3 million. That is serving 20 new single-family dwelling units. Therefore, if you just took every person paid cash up front, that cost would be $65,000 per single-family residential unit. That's just simply doing the math on a cash basis. Now, what we're trying to decide is, since the district has decided to offer financing to those 20 people for that project, as well as the other fees they might pay, we have this additional analysis to look at because we're going to pay this over time. So we have a time value of money scenario we need to look at. So that's what I'll be presenting on page 3. So if you look at this table, on the left-hand side, you'll see fiscal year, and you'll see the number of years, and you'll see the horizon capacity charge required, the first column in the blue. Now that would list the charge that would increase at 3% annually based upon 4 units connecting each year for the next 5 years. From that, we get a payment stream, and then we get a discounted net present value of that payment stream. So what we're trying to determine is what is the charge you would charge today such that the net present value is equal to 0, which means the district would recover all of its costs. You recover your financing through the payment stream. You've got 20 people, we're going to pay a financing charge. And so that combination of the annual cash flow discounted 3% gives you the charge, which is shown here, $58,083. Now, the point of this is that if this all worked out perfectly, just like this table said, you can charge $58,000, but reality, what is reality? We don't really know what that reality scenario is going to be. So we have a high, if everybody paid cash, of $65,000. And if we do this financing scenario, the charge could be $58,083. So we're in that range. But what is reality? We don't really know. So for the district to really recover its cost and be assured that it does, that charge would probably be $65,000 is what it should offer at the cost of each unit. Okay. So keeping that in mind, that's $58,000. Let's look at the next page, page 4. This would be a combination of the 3 charges that a customer who connects to the Horizon line would pay. They would pay the Horizon capacity charge we just discussed. They would pay the system capacity charge, that's the red column top. Then they would pay the annexation fee. And then it'd be a total far right in the yellow column, that totals everything up. So a customer then, you would be offering $70,074 as what the charges to be collected from the unit connecting up, assuming you charge $58,000 we talked about in the last page. That translates into about $440 a month for each unit if they connected next year. Now, what occurs on this is those charges keep going up annually. So if they delay, then the cost gets higher, their charge gets higher. So then their payment's going to also increase. So instead of $440 a month, $445, $450, $450, so forth, as we move forward in this scenario. So this should give you an idea of what the charges would be. The district charge for a customer connecting. This should give a customer who connects what their total charge might be and what their payment might be considered on a monthly basis. So at this point, let me open it up for any questions like anything.
I just have to comment, it's more of a comment than a question. That is without counting the monthly amount that you pay to have sewer, right? Or is that what the, is that the yellow column? What column represents what we pay every month?
The last
Far right column. So the total monthly payment for 1 year.
Okay, and that includes the $76 a month sewer fee that we pay? Okay, that is my question.
This is strictly what they call connection for capacity charges. They're one-time charges when they connect up to the system. That covers the cost of a line, a rising line, the cost to buy into the system, system capacity charge, and the annexation fee to become part of it.
I follow all that, and I didn't mean to make it complicated, but just as somebody, as a homeowner, I'm thinking, okay, so I'm paying $439 to go from septic to sewer, plus that's not counting the $76 I'm paying my sewer bill, tax time. It's not something you see every month. So people are paying over $500 a month. That's how I, as a housewife, would see it. It's like, wow, our sewer's costing us over $500 a month. So, didn't mean to confuse it, but that's a lot.
And that's for 20 years,
That's correct.
and 440.
Yes.
Keep in mind, this scenario at 440 assumes the district said full to $58,083 as the capacity charge. When I recommend, at least I would recommend you charge 65 as the district is made whole. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So this will be a little bit higher. So depending what the decision and discussion is here tonight, this is not quite finalized, so it will be upon your decision.
Okay. Does anyone else have any questions in the public or up here?
How many of you are willing to actually do this? The first year, the second year, the third year?
From your survey.
From your surveys. Because we do know at least one house has put in a completely new septic system just recently. They won't budge on that.
Right.
There's no reason for them to go in. So now you're down to 19.
Well, we haven't taken a penny from anyone, so nobody is 100% committed, right? But it looked like we had about 3 or 4 people.
We had 6,
Okay.
so we're down to 5.
Those are the people that were in need of it immediately. When we did the initial survey, I believe we had 16 people who expressed interest and 4 who expressed no interest. That's where we were when we did the survey initially. So we're anticipating hopefully getting 5 within the first year or 2.
Okay, anyone else before we go back to Mr. Tuckfield?
Do
Okay.
you have any more public comment? Mr. Sherman, Ms. Larson?
Well, you know, it's all, who can afford what these days? You are the job for a while, and you have COVID-19. You get a little pessimistic about the future. But not me. That's all unless I get to talk to Wendy.
Yeah, we were very surprised and disappointed in how much the cost of doing this increased just from, the end of last year to now.
Truck was hooked from the street to the house, correct?
Yes.
Anybody have any idea what that costs?
I don't know for sure. Michael, do you have an idea?
15 grand.
15?
No, it's got to be based on the length of your survey.
It would be based on the length.
Excuse me,
It's an average.
Samantha, Tiana, Deer Trail, you're talking from the stub out to abandoning your septic system, running the line there. That's on you. You're asking what that, it was 5 to 10, I would say, sound good to you, Mr. Engineer?
Reasonable, maybe 5 to 10 grand, depends on how far your septic is from the street.
But that was, I didn't mean to interrupt, that was the number that we were using 6 months ago, and I'm gonna assume that that's probably more expensive. It seems like anything to do with construction seems to have gotten goosed recently.
Honestly, 5 is more expensive.
Well,
Yeah.
But it's not that expensive and it's not that difficult a job that it's not even the homeowner to do. If you can operate a tractor, get a tickler, that's 90% of the job.
Yeah, no.
That doesn't represent most of people.
Infrastructure. The board has mentioned that we don't want to build out any further until we get sufficient interest from those areas. For example, we reach back out to Stadium Drive, and when we get a sufficient interest, then we would look into financing that, rebuilding that part out. Now, their fees are going to be probably way higher than what you guys are paying right now, just based off of dollar figures and cost of construction in those few years from now when we do move forward. Glengarry, again, we would reach out to that neighborhood, get interest from that neighborhood. So we're taking it neighborhood by time. The board would like to get interest from the community, buy-in from the community, and know that that community that we're going into is going to complete this project or at least get involved. So.
The one thing that I said to Gary is that we have a lot of structure already in place, which you get to enjoy when we connect you into it. The people down here in San Ynez in the middle of town don't get a kickback from your money. They paid into the system, it works, and we're, asking you to join us. But the people here don't get a kickback on it. We're just trying to keep things, the district at where it is in its money flow, stable. We're not trying to jump up and get a lot more money, but we're trying not to lose any money to the people that have already invested. But most of us felt very uncomfortable about going ahead and signing a contract without letting everybody here know what the cost of increases have become in just 1 year. I really think it's gonna benefit you to get on sewer because the state most likely is gonna require you to anyways. Um, and the cost is only going up. This may seem like a sweet deal, in 5 years, you'll be going, oh, God, it's twice the cost now. And
Oh, I'm sorry, each new group of homeowners, each neighborhood served will be paying for the infrastructure serving that
right,
portion. I hear what you're saying. We've talked about that, and it doesn't seem fair. You know, when you're the first person to do a survey in your neighborhood, it costs you the bulk of it, and then everybody else can ping off your little brass deal. It's like, oh yeah, I made it less for them.
One thing I want to reiterate is what Mike said, is we're not building this out any bigger than it would have been built if it was just Horizon Drive for the next 20 years. We're still building at the same required sizes, lengths that we have to build for California, state of California purposes. If we were putting in a new pump station to service the other communities, or building it in a larger capacity, then we would have to discuss, okay, how would those people pay for this project in the future? But based on how we're building it, which are requirements, there's no upgrades or anything that we're building for them necessarily.
So the minimum size actually will serve them also.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now,
Oh, go ahead.
someone made a comment that the state might force us to go sewer in the future versus maybe a new septic system.
we don't know what the state's going to do for sure, but the Clean Water Act's getting much more tougher every year.
So if I can, real quick, a while back, 2016, 2015, the county did a local agency management plan, which stated the surrounding communities that are high in nitrates, that are contaminating the groundwater, and they're highly encouraging sewers to be put into place so we can remove people from septic. As we all know, the state's not going to get any more lenient in their requirements as far as septic or sewer. So they are asking us to push sewer into the neighborhood that will assist in alleviating the groundwater contamination. So I think that's what Mr. Redford's saying is, in any government, water or wastewater, the state has never been more lenient, and they do push requirements further for people to convert to sewer.
However, we don't require, nobody has to hook up, but yeah, it's an unfunded mandate in a sense, that every time the state makes harsher requirements, they don't give us money, the homeowners or anybody involved in it, to offset our costs. But I think probably most of the people in this room remember what a big deal LAMP was that Jose just described, because it made it a lot easier for you to fail.
Once, I believe, once the sewer line is in, then your choice of going with a package plant is no longer available. If you have that sewer line running within 200 feet of your property line, you do have to connect if your sewage fails, or if your sewer fails, or your septic.
Yeah.
So that you need to know. I mean, once that comes through, the neighborhood has to, that's how eventually everybody ends up on sewer.
The neighbor that put in the septic system just recently, if their system fails tomorrow, I mean, we put in the pipeline and the next day it fails, they're gonna have to hook up. Depends on how long their septic system lasts. Yeah. And so everybody, once that line's in, if you're within 200 feet and your system fails, you will be required to hook up.
So your property line is within 200 feet.
Your property line.
Not your particular septic.
Not your septic system, your property line. Yeah, yeah. Your septic system, yeah, your property line, not your septic system. And that's not a requirement from us. That's a county and state requirement.
And when you hear of people in the valley who have that happen that don't have access to the sewer line, it's a worse problem. So even if you choose not to go sewer now, I know that your neighborhood and that the valley in general is going to be better. And I'm always open to change my vote, but I was ready to vote, even though these bids were a lot more expensive. I think it's something that needs to be done, and I don't like the price of it. I don't like that at all, but I just agree with everybody at this table, it's not gonna get less expensive, and we will be happy that the line is in, because at some point, everybody's probably gonna need it. But we want to, any questions, if anybody has anything to say about the increased costs, or, you know, your questions are good. We have a lot of the same questions.
Just a big thing to think about. Yeah. Next thing coming out. I do have one more comment. Mr. Redford, thank you for walking the neighborhood.
Oh, well,
Appreciate it that you came by, even though we had gotten it in the mail. You did say, yeah, people look at it.
yeah,
And then the
no,
circular waste baskets.
no, I thought it was important you guys know that was happening.
Yeah, thought he was, publishing clearinghouse.
That's right. There might have been a check in there.
Seems that we've answered. Is there any further questions? Online?
Excuse me? No, I don't see anybody.
Is there anyone attending online?
Neil,
No.
but have not seen a hand up or anything. So then, if that's the case, if nobody has any further discussion on that, let me go back to Jose.
Thank you. So at that time, we're looking for board to make a motion to authorize staff to move forward with the capacity cost based off of the study provided by Tuckfield and Associates this evening, and also move forward with allowing staff, authorizing staff to move forward with the CSDA financing, which would allow staff to sign the sheet that the term sheet we received and accept those terms. And those terms are good for 90 days, after 30 days after.
15 days from the time that they sent it to us.
Correct.
But then we have up to 90 days to.
Correct. Once I sign it, we have 90 days to accept the funding and complete the transaction.
You need a motion, or you need just direction?
We need a motion.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, so we have a motion from Director Beard to approve the capacity costs and authorize staff to move forward with the CSDA funding. Does that cover it?
Yes,
Okay,
perfect.
so now we need a second.
I'll second it.
Okay, Director Van Pelt seconds the motion.
Okay, so we have a motion by Director Beard and a second by Director Van Pelt to approve the Horizon Drive capacity costs as presented and authorize staff to move forward with the CSDA financing. We'll do a roll call vote. Director Redfern.
Aye.
Director Van Pelt.
Aye.
Director Beard.
Aye.
Director Jones.
Aye.
Director Gambra.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Okay, and then I'm going to go back to Jose for action item B.
Action item B, real quick, Clayton, if you need to get on the road, because I know you got to travel down south, you're more than welcome to, and I thank you for coming. We may have a question. We have a question, Director Redfern. Appreciate your time this evening, and we'll see you at the next board meeting as well, because at that board meeting, we'll be discussing the capacity charges as Clayton has reviewed and made the adjustments that the board requested. So we'll see Mr. Tuckville in 2 weeks.
Thank you for coming in
Thank you.
person.
Thank you.
We appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Clayton, drive safe.
See you, Clayton.
The next staff report is on the contracts received for the Horizon Drive Mainline project. And this evening, I have Mike Kilborn, District Engineer here as well to answer any questions regarding the projects or any engineering questions that may be asked of the public or the board. As discussed at last month's board meeting, the bids were received. We received 3 bids in the range of $998,000 to $1.273 million. One of the bids was rejected based off of the timing of receiving the bid. The bid came 30 minutes after the opening of the public bid, so it disqualified it. Didn't really matter because as it was the highest bid that was received. So the 2 bids received were for $998,000 and for $1.126 million. The lowest bid was from Specialty Construction and the second bid was from Tierra Contracting. So both those were received. They were both responsive, complete bid packages that have been reviewed by Mr. Kilborn, myself, and the board at last month's board meeting. We discussed these concerns. As Director Jones mentioned earlier, the cost did increase based off of the initial engineer's estimate. That's based off of construction cost increases and also one of the requirements of the county road work that's required that was oversight. And that added another $180,000 to $190,000 to the project, which requires us to slurry the roadway versus using natural dirt to backfill the roadway. And slurry is just a cement sand mixture that allows it not to settle or compact or the roadways to settle and alleviate any concerns for any sinkholes in the ground or any speed bumps, man-made speed bumps in the roadway. So that was one cost that increased it, and also just the increase of materials and construction costs throughout. That's just from 1 year ago. Do I have any questions regarding the bids as received and the amounts that were received from the board based off discussion from last month or review of this package again this month?
No, all of our questions, I think, were answered.
And we did review them at our regular meeting, but we wanted to just have one more meeting to make sure everybody knew what had changed.
Do we have any questions?
Okay.
And again, I just want to remind the public, we're available here to answer any questions on a daily basis or any concerns that you may have. If you want to meet with us here, you want us to set up a Zoom meeting or even in-person meeting, we can do that as well.
I'm admitting somebody into the room I just saw.
Okay.
And I don't know if she can hear me, but if she wants to make a comment. Is there anyone currently in the room that would like to make a comment before we entertain a motion? Alyssa was the person I admitted.
Couple of questions.
Yes.
Is this the time to ask about timing of the construction?
So the board approves the awarding of the contract this evening and awards district staff and authorizes district staff to sign the notice to proceed, the notice to award, and the agreement. Then we're hoping to anticipate starting the project. I'm thinking sometime in July now, Mike, based off of the 2-week.
Yeah, most likely. They'll award the contract and then the contract will get materials and probably take them a month or something like that. So mid to late July, maybe beginning of August.
So are we saying that people could be hooked up to sewer by Thanksgiving? Is that realistic?
Yeah, that's realistic.
That is realistic.
Yeah.
How is it going to affect our ingress, egress from our property?
So what we built into the documents in the bid contract is that they maintain ingress and egress from every property. So if they're digging in front of your property, they must plate it at night so that you can still enter and access your property as well. So they must leave the construction site in an accessible manner, not only for your vehicles, but for emergency vehicles to enter the road as well. So they're required to make sure that your properties are always accessible.
But during the day, we better park down the street.
Your best bet would be, but they should still maintain access. But in the event that they're in the middle of that pole in front of your property, it may be best to park down the street.
Rather than tennis court.
Yes, yes. By the high school.
Hopefully the high school's okay with that.
They should be. It'll be summertime by then, and
Yeah.
kids will all be out of school hopefully.
And did we have an agreement that we would not start work before what time, 7 a.m. or 8
No,
a.m.?
on the properties that we received agreements for the easement, we agreed to not start work prior to 8 a.m. on those properties. On the roadways, they could start at, I believe, county ordinance is 7 a.m., Mike?
Yeah, county allows that.
And what's the duration of the project? Start to finish? Expected.
We gave them 150 days based off of the documents.
Right, yeah, give them 150 days. We don't think it'll take that long, so maybe start to finish construction in 4 months. Hopefully less, but depends on how they see some things.
And just to reiterate for everyone in the room and also online, and we'll make sure we have the next item on the agenda is construction management services. So there will be a construction manager on site to represent the CSD. They may not be there every day, but staff, including myself, is planning to make visits out to discuss any questions, concerns that the public may have. We also will be continuing the monthly newsletters where we share our information for any contact from the public. If you have any concerns throughout the project, you're more than welcome to give us a call. We'll make a site visit out there as well. So we'll be available during that process. whether it's Wendy or myself going out there with the construction hat, one of us will be available to go out.
Well, and we all know that Director Redfern pops up out there too, so, it is something that this district is committed to. Besides finishing this job and finishing in a timely way, we don't want to make anybody's life harder. So we welcome any kind of input or complaints or questions that we have.
Yeah, and keep in mind too, half the project is in that easement, distance wise, it's about 1,000 feet, and then in the street, it's about 1,000 feet, so, you may be looking at a month and a half, or a month in the easement area, and maybe 2 months, or 2.5 months in the street area.
Are there any other questions? Yes.
So, you put the sewer line in, you put a stub to my property, and then I say, plumber, go at it. Do they have to talk to you guys first?
You have the full permit with us for them to do the work, but they'll also have the full permit with the county to abandon your septic tank and do the work. The work on our end, the permit is for us to be able to inspect it and do all the work, saying it's connected legally to our system.
Because I know the county will ask for a bunch.
Do you know those fees off the top of your head?
I don't. It's just, it should just be EHS and asking for a septic tank abandonment permit.
How much?
I don't know.
Can we find that out?
We can get them the information on how.
Yeah.
If you could, yeah, that would be great, because we just put it in the minutes, and it was $500.
And,
For the permit?
For the permit, yeah, and they never even came and looked at it. Ridiculous.
For the loan? Well, based off of the financing of the project, if you're financing the amount, you're gonna sign an agreement that does state it would be placed on the property, a lien on the property in the event that the property sold or someone foreclosed on a property. So that would be included on the terms of that contract. Yeah. That's what Wendy was saying. We need to make sure we make that notice so everyone's aware that there will be a lien on the property for the amount. Thank you.
Shouldn't be a problem with increasing the value of the property.
That it increases? Yes.
Yes, yes.
Okay. If there aren't any other questions, then I would like to call for a motion to provide staff with direction on awarding the contract to complete the Horizon Drive Mainline Extension Project and to authorize the general manager or board secretary to sign the contract agreement on behalf of the district.
So just to throw in there on direction of awarding the contract to Specialty Construction in the amount of $998,315.
Okay. So we're looking for a motion to provide staff with direction on awarding the contract to Specialty. Is that the name of it?
Yes.
To complete the right board. I don't have it written down here. It must be on the.
It's on page 2 of that staff report.
Okay, to award the bid to Specialty Construction Incorporated for $998,315, and to authorize the general manager or board secretary to sign the contract agreement on behalf of the district. Do I have that motion?
Sorry, before you do that, do you want to add in giving the general manager authorization to sign change orders as well?
Oh,
This would be the place to do it, huh?
yeah. So at this time, you would also authorize the general manager to sign change orders as they're come in from the contractor.
Okay, does anybody want to discuss that, or is everybody okay with
sign the agreement.
Do we want to put a cap on that? I mean,
Well, that occurred to me. I think there's a $25,000 cap on the,
change.
on the spending of the general manager. He can, use his card up to $25,000 without authorization. So that, I don't know if that's a good number for
I
change
think I would
orders.
like to cap on it.
Yeah, I mean, nothing personal. It just seems like prudent behavior.
We'll be taking advice from the general contractor too, correct, and then the change order requests. So in that sense, it would be.
So we're saying the change to award to allow the district manager to sign,
Yeah, did you put a contingency in that number,
no, we do not.
a specific one?
Do we want to put a contingency on
I
that?
mean, you could say 5% or 10% or whatever.
Well, we built in a 10%
Correct.
So maybe
overhead.
authorize them up to 10%,
Yeah.
and if something is a positive beyond that, it comes back to the board for approval.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah, that's
I think it's
reasonable.
reasonable.
10% of 900 and.
We built in,
Whatever.
we, into this budget, we built in a 10% over.
But that's total, that's not
Right.
10% on each change order.
Right, but that's $90,000.
Right, that's what I'm saying, we want the 10% overall, we wouldn't want to be able to authorize $90,000 per change order, is that what
No,
you're
that's
saying?
correct.
I'm saying,
It's a total amount, so I think what Mike is saying is, we have authorized the general manager to approve change orders up to we reach that 90,000 threshold. At that point, we come back to the board for approval of any change orders after we reach that threshold of $90,000.
I think it's a little late. Once you've reached that, then what if we have more changes? Wouldn't we be better with knowing if it's over 50,000 and then, calling a special meeting if it's over 90,000?
So I think what we can say is if we achieve a $50,000 limit on the change orders, at that point, anything over that 50,000, we bring the board back into, appraise the board of where we're at that 50,000. And if we need more change orders after that, we'll bring it to the board for review and discussion.
Yeah, because a lot of the change orders are gonna be like 2,000 here, 3,000 here.
That's fine.
So we say 50,000.
Instead of him coming to the board every time.
No, we don't want him to have to come to the board. What I'm saying is I don't want to be at 90,000, we're midway through the project, and then we have to, we're going to say it's another 90,000. I don't want to get into that. So I want to be notified of it.
Yeah.
It's not, I'm not trying to hinder the project, but I want to keep a financial eye on it.
It seems like 25,000 is a big change. Like if there's gonna be a change order that's costing 25,000, that seems like a good place to be concerned that we need to talk.
But it could be a 25,000 change order that's at the end of the project, and it could be the only change order. So I think this is my suggestion is that once we reach a $50,000 threshold on all change orders, then we come back to the board and say, okay, we've reached $50,000 worth of change orders. Now we have another request for a $10,000 change order. Here's the request. Can we review and discuss this and get direction from the board? And where are we at the project at this time? Did we just start? Are we towards the end of it that we don't anticipate reaching that 90,000? Does that sound fair to what you were saying?
Sounds fair to me.
That
Yeah,
sounds fair to me.
yeah, that'll work.
Could there be a limit on any one change order?
I think that's what.
That's kind of a combination of
That's what we're saying, it's a limit of
Combination
25,000 on one change order.
So if we get a change order that's over 25,000, we will bring that back to the board as well, irregardless of reaching that $50,000
Set that
threshold.
number now.
So kind of a double strike at 50, right?
Yeah,
Anything over 50 will go, but 25,000 would be the limit on any one change order.
that's perfect.
Okay.
I need to write down the motion, so repeat it.
Scribbling, rewriting.
And we don't have a motion yet, so we'll ask Wendy to read that again.
Yes, please.
Okay. Do we have somebody that wants to make the motion?
I'll make the motion as stated.
Do we have a second? Okay, so we have a motion by Director Beard, a second by Director Redfern to provide staff with direction to award the contract to Specialty in the amount of $998,315, to sign the contract documents, and to authorize the GM to sign change orders with a limit of $25,000 per change order and up to $50,000
Total.
total.
Okay, so we've got the,
Is that good?
yes.
Okay,
The motion from Director
roll
Beard?
call vote. Director Redfern.
I think we don't quite have it right here.
No?
Because the total is 50,000, the total actually is 90,000, but we want to review it in a meeting at 50,000. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll raise change order up to 50,000.
you know, yeah, we find an ancient Aztec village there and they want to open it up and do that.
Well,
Some things change.
and look at how much
We
it
don't know
changed
what's
just
in the ground.
between what we thought the bid was gonna be at and where it ended up. We're in, interesting times right now.
But I do think we want to keep a finger on the pulse of this. Yeah.
Okay. So we have a motion by Director Beard, a second by Director Redfern, to provide staff with the direction to award the contract to specialty construction in the amount of $998,315, to sign the contract documents, to authorize the GM to sign change orders with a limit of $25,000 per change order and a maximum of $50,000, and then bring back to the board for discussion and approval for any change order over the total of $50,000, up to $90,000.
I think that up to 50 is
No,
okay because the
after
90 is in the
Any,
contract.
any change orders that, all change orders at 50,000, then after they hit the $50,000 limit, we would approve them.
There's notification at 50
Yes.
and that's your threshold,
Yes.
Right.
okay? And then at the 90, that's the limit.
Right.
Do a roll call vote. Director Beard? Director Beard?
Yeah,
Director Van Pelt?
Aye.
Director Redfern?
Aye.
Director Jones? Director Bianca?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Okay, now we're getting down here to action item C, which is on awarding contract for construction management inspection services. Go ahead and take that, Jose.
Okay, so, as Canon is one of the engineering firms that submitted their bid, Mike, I don't know if you want to stick around or not, in case there's any questions regarding some of the services, but I think I listed all the services that were mentioned in the bid that we solicited for, so you can leave or you can stay, it's up to you.
Like, I'll just repeat myself from the conversation.
Okay.
If that's okay, if that works for you guys.
That works. Okay, so, the district received 3 proposals for construction management services. They range in the price range of $55,510 to $60,000. The Horizon Drive Mainline project will be imperative of having construction management services available. And some of those responsibilities of the construction manager will be to oversee and direct the construction project from construction start date to completion, reviewing the project in depth to manage change orders and requests for deviations, overseeing all on-site, off-site construction to monitor compliance with building and safety regulations, review the work progress on a daily basis in person, remotely, or via telephone, prepare internal and external reports pertaining to job status and communicate to district staff, and plan to prevent problems and resolve any emerging ones that may occur throughout the project. Staff sent out 8 requests for proposals, with only 3 firms providing their proposals. We initially sent it out to 5 firms, received 2 responses. We felt we need to see if we can save the district more money and find a lower cost proposal. So we sent it out to 3 more firms, receiving 1 more bid at that time. The 3 proposal costs submitted were as follows. Canon Engineering came in at $58,368. Wallace Group came in at $55,510, and Kerr Construction Management came in at a flat $60,000. There's a few pros for each one. Canon Engineering is our current engineering firm. They're familiar with our system. They're familiar with the project as they put out the bid documents and help us specify and put the specifics for the project together. Wallace Group is a firm that has done a lot of work in the valley. That they're familiar with these services. I've worked with Wallace Group on my previous place where I work, and was also CSD. They've done projects for the water district and other agencies locally. Kerr Construction Management, the gentleman originally out of Goleta, but now he lives locally and performs his work locally, so he would be a local source in the valley. I believe he lives out in Buellton at this time. Those are some of the pros of all 3. Based off of all 3 submitting responsive bids, I would suggest that the district approve the construction management services be awarded to Wallace Group in the amount of $55,510. So at this time, I would take any questions from the board regarding this agenda item.
And we are obligated to go with the lowest bid on this as well.
We are not, I believe we are obligated, as Mr. Battles mentioned last time, we're obligated to go with the lowest because they did submit responsive bids as well.
Okay, well, they were the lowest and all three would do a good job.
So I believe all three would be able to perform the services we're requesting.
So now we're looking for a motion to award. Okay, so looking for a motion to approve the proposal for construction management, for Wallace Construction Management Inspection Services for the Horizon Drive Mainline Extension Project in the amount of, that says
55,510.
55,510. Do I have a motion?
I have a question.
Okay.
Isn't this something that Craig could do? I mean, or one of our men?
Well, Craig doesn't have necessarily the ability to understand change orders, requests for different materials. He does have knowledge and experience working with stuff, but his manpower is required around the district throughout the day as well. If emergency arises and we have to pull him away from the project.
So you're saying that Wallace is gonna have a man staying there for 8 hours a day during the working hours?
As needed and as required. So even during that time, so say they're doing trenching and at that time it's required the guys there for 5 days at 8 hours to monitor that area of the work, then they will be there for 8 hours, 5 days during that time. Whereas Craig may not.
But we both know that's not likely to happen. No, I've never seen inspectors stay on the job, well, on a lateral or on a.
Mike, why don't you chime in here? You're an expert.
Come on, say anything.
I'm just wondering, it just seems like a lot of money for inspection.
At random.
I completely
Right.
agree with you. I
It's
will
not just
say,
inspection, it's construction management.
I
And if
understand.
there's a problem, they need to deal with it. and bring
This
us
is
back.
the reason I'm asking. When I worked here, I did a bunch of different lines. I was the inspector. I was the one watching how they put the pipe in. Was it too cold to be dropped in? I mean, the pipe's supposed to be a certain temperature when you put it in. All those things I did for the district. We didn't have all this fancy stuff. Is it required that we do? And are we spending money smartly?
I believe we are, because if there's any technical proposals from the contractor that staff is not familiar with, or anything that they're trying to get away with, that we don't have the knowledge of as far as construction codes, requirements from how to put the pipe in, the size of the pipes, stuff like that, then we have someone who has that familiarity, can protect us in the event that they're trying to.
We already know the size of the pipe, and laterals are pretty standard size.
here's what I can tell you that I've run into is because the regulations are so, I don't want to use the word tedious, maybe complex is another word, that we worry about falling out of favor with the people who regulate us. But I'm with you. It's like we've kind of went into this thing where we just hire everything out to consultants when we've got a full staff here, and it seems like it should be something that should be able to happen in-house. I understand what you're saying. General Manager Acosta knows the realities of working with the different agencies and what they expect, that they're sometimes part of the problem and why there's, our costs get driven up. And case in point, the slurry, we could have a engineer there that was in charge of compaction and allow us to do it, what is it called, native?
Native stuff.
Yes, but instead we're going with the slurry, and that's what the county wants, and they've got this, uniformity. But I think this is a good discussion to have. At some point, people need to start saying, has everything gotten a little bit too complex?
The engineer, the guy who's putting it in, the general contractor has the spec sheet he's got to abide by state law, by county law. He's ultimately gonna do it right because the gun's gonna be pointed at his head.
Right.
So you want, what you're asking for is someone to manage him who probably, maybe doesn't have the experience, and maybe he does as the general contractor. You know, the general contractor is ultimately responsible for everything he signed on to do, and that's to make everything function to the state, county regulations, period. Now, if you want to start bringing in more people to make more bureaucracy out on the street, we can do that. Why, you know, could we do this on an as-needed basis to hire a manager?
Well, if we
If
need one,
need
then we
one,
can, yeah.
You can jump on that bandwagon, as opposed, there might be conflicts between the general contractor and the manager. I say this and you say that. Well, I'm putting it in. I'm responsible ultimately, so what you say is secondary to what I'm responsible for. I think you could possibly be much more efficient if you had a nice relationship going with the construction company putting it in. And if you needed consultation or guidance, then you can hire somebody on an as-needed basis, a consultation for a specific task regarding to the whole project, but have somebody oversee a general contractor whose task is to get the thing done to spec. I kind of find that not really necessary.
Well, I'm agreeing with you guys. I'm saying we're having this conversation kind of late in the game because we've already used staff hours, we've solicited bids. So lesson for me,
But it's $60,000 or $58,000.
I agree with you. I'm glad we're having the discussion now.
Mr. Mike.
Can I just real quick, I want to ask Mike to answer a question without discussing the bids that were submitted or information included in the bids, but as a district engineer, and what the question Mr. Redfern asked was, why is construction management services needed throughout a project?
So I know Greg and Jose will be out checking up on the contractor and checking in, but realistically, the reason you want this person there is to make sure the contractor does not cut corners. And you will cut corners if you don't have someone that you got an eye on.
So again, I go back to, that means we're gonna have somebody there 8 hours a day. But that's not what the contract says.
The contract,
It says,
the bids that were received were not for full-time.
Right.
They are for part-time inspection as needed, and it's on both the district's plate and the inspector's plate to decide what is a critical moment to be out there. Keep an eye on the contractor. When they're digging in the ground, they're trenching, they're putting pipe in the ground, those are critical moments.
sure, bedding, all that is critical.
Yeah. If they're moving stuff around and patching stuff in the street, that's not critical, and your inspector's not gonna be there.
So
Do you think that our staff doesn't have the skill?
I think they don't have the time. Craig's got other things to do, Leslie's got other things to do, they're not gonna be able to be out there full time. Like, you can't have Craig out there for 8 or 9 hours a day watching them.
But we don't already, that's what I'm saying.
We would during the trenching, the
They
example
would
you
have to
gave.
be out there for.
Right, right. When I worked for the district, I got stuck out there all day watching.
And if you have the staff to do that, that's totally fine, yeah.
Typically in agencies I've been with, you have an engineer on site or an engineer on staff who that would be their responsibility to be out there all day monitoring this. That's at larger agencies, obviously. And the way it was worded was so that we did save money, because these estimates could have come in the area of $90,000 to $100,000 if we did have them out there full time. So we did word it in the sense that we didn't want to have to pay someone full time when it's not needed or required. What we can do is we can work with the construction manager to minimize their time and try to decrease the amount of the total contract. So for example, they're submitted for $55,000. Staff could say, well, today we'll go out there and we can monitor the connection to the manholes because Craig's familiar with that. So we will work with them to try to do that as well.
Will that reduce the amount that we're paying them, or are they gonna?
The amount's already reduced. When I first presented this to my CEO guy, he said, oh, it's gonna be $100,000 to have full-time inspection on it. So this is already scaled back.
So you're at the bottom line here, is what you're saying.
Well, I mean, not at the bottom line.
We're low.
To have a safe amount of inspection time to keep the contractor honest, I think this is where you need to be. You could cut back further, but now you're probably only sending an inspector out there maybe 1 day a week. And
I hate to think
probably not enough.
that we just entered $1 million contract with somebody who we think might not be honest.
Well, we entered into a contract with the lowest bid.
That was a good bid with a good company. I mean, they have to be a qualified lowest bidder.
Well,
Yes,
we
our
don't
qualified
necessarily have to have Craig standing there.
Right.
Don't we have 3 other men working here also?
We have 2 other field operators, yes.
Yes. Can't one of them, or they take turns doing it or whatever? I mean, it's not, to me, laying pipe, or what I learned about pipe while I worked here at the district for 17 years is it wasn't that difficult to read the blueprints and know what was going on, to make the measurements, to say, yes, we are 17 feet deep to the top of the pipe. That's where we're supposed to be. It wasn't, trigonometry. It was pretty general.
I agree with you too. 22 years ago, I jumped in a trench without any shoring and not worry about that concern. And that wasn't a requirement at the time, but they introduced laws that require you to put shoring in. Now I have those added costs. So it's more technical than taking them.
But we had shoring too, and the shoring wasn't our responsibility to do it, and that wasn't part of the job that I was doing in the inspection.
And the board, if the board does decide to reject this, then staff will do their best to make sure that we perform those duties, and we'll do it to the best of our abilities.
I'm really interested in hearing from everybody on this, because just the part of me that's trying to be reasonable here, I agree that if we can not spend 50,000, if it's just, if it's fluff or it's just something, I'd like to cut costs, but at the same time.
I'd like to hear comments from, if anybody else has comments from the public.
Well, I have a couple of comments. You said it's legally required to go with the lowest bid?
It's the lowest responsive bid. As long as all bids were responsive and responded to what we were requiring, then we should go with the lowest bid.
Question 2 is you talked about on an emergency basis, hiring a consultant to come in. That's going to put your project down for a day or 2 by the time you get somebody to say, oh, no, my schedule's busy for the next week. I'll be here next week. Right. Now you lost a week of construction. Now we're into December, January before we can hook up.
If we use in-house, we don't have that week.
If you can do it in-house. What if your guys get called out to an emergency? Jose is saying, and you got all 5 or 10 guys, gals, over here working this emergency project. You got a busted pipe. They're not there. And you got a problem.
We got lots of ifs.
Yeah.
The biggest concern for me
My
would be the technical side of it.
My personal feeling is I've done enough construction and enough construction management, and I am a construction liaison from the owners of my properties to the construction company. We should have we should hire a company to come in and do this.
And does that protect us legally also? Is that person then on the hook if he says things went well?
Oh, yeah.
And they weren't?
And their insurance.
Yeah, I mean, these are the kind of, because
Yeah.
I like what's being said. I like questioning this, and it
Right.
seems like
I
a
don't
lot of
have a problem
regulation is
with
a
questioning
racket.
it. I'm going from my past experience.
Your inspector will make a daily log and will say what happened that day. And
Right.
any anomalies or.
And we will have a log of what's going on
That's-
at the critical moments, so
That's
that
if
if
he's
there's.
there.
Huh?
That's if he's there, because I believe you just said that we cut this is a reduced cost that he'll be there at least once a week. So that leaves 4 days for things to happen
But when
in the
they-
worst situation.
No, but
critical
when they're
moments.
trenching and laying pipe, they have to be on site
At critical moments, they will
at
be.
critical moment. And that's a critical moment.
Yeah, embedding the pipe, that's critical, yes.
Yeah.
Manhole.
So I'm understanding though, if they aren't there at a critical moment and something happens, then it's on them. They were supposed to be managing this and, their expertise, they're supposed to know that they should be there during compaction, during whatever
During
it
the
is.
manhole, compression check and all the other good things, yeah.
Yes.
So you can back into probably how many hours they've allotted for this, if you just take that number and divide it by 150 bucks an hour or something like that. That's how many hours they've got allotted for the project. They'll use them as needed, basically. That's kind of how this, project, like a contract like this works. If they need to come out for 4 hours or 6 hours in a day, that just, eats away at their overall budget. They might be there 5 days in a row for 8 hours, and then maybe next week they're not there at all, and maybe they're there for a day the next week.
Who decides on that? How, as needed?
So they will work with the contractor and they'll say, what are you doing for the next week or two? And they'll have to make the determination at that point, like, okay, these are important things I need to be here for. I'm gonna be here for that.
And with Jose.
So based off of sending them the contract documents, the bid documents, the construction management services bids, reviewed the contract, reviewed the work that needs to be performed. And they say, this is what we're estimating to be there for the critical moments. This is how many hours we're anticipating being there. This is our cost based off of critical moments throughout this project. So they've already anticipated they have to be there for the compression testing, for the bedding, for the connections and all that. And they put their hours they built those hours into their estimate.
Right now, I'm leaning toward what Director Beard said, of still asking that we go ahead and approve this, but I think there's a larger discussion to have here about what our goals are for our staff and how we go. I know that you've been, you've spent almost a year now, and you probably have some ideas that might be something that we want to talk about, what expectations we have of our staff and doing things in-house, because I do think, it is silly to contract everything out. There are some things that we may need to, and this is an expensive project. I might want to have my inexperience somehow end up costing the district more.
And we definitely can agendize something or discuss something further, reevaluating the job descriptions as we did a few months back, reevaluating the requirements from those job descriptions. And my job is to ensure that they're meeting those job requirements and meeting those job goals and specifications. My goal is also to minimize the amount of outside contracting and save the district money. So when we do have the contract out, we review why we're contracting those services out, who we're contracting them out, and try to get at least 3 bids. So that way we can have 3 responsive bids to select from. So we don't just go select one person if it's a high-end job and say, let's pay you $80,000. So we can discuss that as well. That whole round of responsibilities amongst district staff.
Right, and what our district needs and what our objectives are, because, people adapt, times change, and so maybe our needs, what we need from our staff might change also. But for right now, I think I'm gonna go back, if there's no further discussion, and ask for a motion to approve the bid from Wallace. Keep losing where it was, 55510 for a construction management and inspection service for the Horizon Drive project. Would anyone like to make that motion?
I'll make that motion.
Director Beard has made the motion. Is there a second?
I have one question before we
Sure.
vote this motion. If Kilmore could help me. I see some other direct charges that can be in addition to the bid amount. What's a ballpark figure we should anticipate on the other direct expenses of a project like this?
Probably mileage, doing some, I know Wallace is in Denver's area, so are we, so mile per hour interest they take, so.
Okay. In material, so I just see, just looking at it, I kind of slipped through it, and automation, electrical materials, we don't anticipate having, okay, it's just, it's kind of a boilerplate for them to protect themselves and to get a cost plus, okay, arrangement. And you say that Wallace is based here locally as well, so we're not gonna be paying for extensive.
No, that's about $80 a day for travel.
Well, that's why I'm asking. So, and so if you're traveling, when I look at an office in San Luis and we're paying for them to drive back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, I see is the bids, right? What's the true cost of the bid? So I'm just trying to uncover if there's any direct expenses that we're not accounting for when we award a bid. So
I think that's the only one. I don't know if it's worded that that's an addition to it.
yeah, all of them are in addition to, I was trying to clarification on offices, and and I'm asking yourself, I could have asked Jose as well, but just want to see the fine details and making sure that the bid is indeed the lowest bid. There's nothing that we're going to be surprised about.
Did you have something, Wendy?
No, we're looking at, that's pretty close. I was just calculating out the estimated hours based on the contract amount.
For the construction management?
Yes.
So we have,
So you have Wallace Group at an estimated hours of 336 hours, Canon at about 412 hours, and Kerr Construction at 400 hours. Those are the estimated hours based off the submittal and the rates that were submitted.
Well, I have a question then. If you have different hours, that's not necessarily the lowest bid.
Correct.
Okay? If we're all 50 hours and he's at that number, then he's a low bid. But if Canon is offering more hours and it's slightly higher, he could be the cheapest bid. So that needs to be considered. Don't you agree?
I think that's an interesting point that you raised.
When we say responsive, I've always kind of meant to ask this question, which to me is a very vague term. It looks, I mean, to what ability can we go in and look at the bid differently is I guess what we're alluding to, right? We calculate the hours, we calculate what the true low bid is. Do we have the power, Jose, to not award the lowest bid on face value, but actually have a calculation of what the true low bid is?
I believe we did, but when I mentioned that at the last board meeting regarding the contract award for the contract, Rick said that we don't have that authorization to not award the lowest bid if they were responsive and submitted all documents.
And he did define responsive for me, but it may not have been at that meeting. I think that was a one-on-one, maybe either Jose or Rick Battles explained to me. But a responsive covers a lot of territory. And I think one of them, isn't reputation even one of them?
Yes.
Yes,
I
Gary.
think Ms. Van Pelt has brought up a very interesting conundrum. What really is the low bid if you have to pay for mileage, if you have to pay for food or housing or any of that, that is in addition to their fee? And the other question is, have you ever seen a best and final offer? Because I worked in the government and as a contractor with General Motors, we put in bids for a lot of things. And you got 3 or 4 people bidding, and they all, whoever accepting the bids looks at them and says, okay, you got one more chance, best and final. Give us your best and final bid. Because they're all so close, and we're not sure based on all these other things. Yeah, it meets the requirements, but dang, last time you charged us extra.
You need to specify in your contract the hours, because that's kind of the nucleus, that's the catalyst of what he's going to charge. The cost of doing business, which is his mileage, his hotels and whatever, that's a sideline. If we spec out the hours, okay, X amount of hours, have them bid on the hours, now you get a competitive bid because you're all bidding on the same thing. Why should I say 20 hours to get the task and Joe's construction company says 30 hours, but we're all guaranteeing the same thing? If you specify the hours for the critical inspections that they are going to qualify themselves for, I think that zeroes it in more competitively on who should get the task. Why should we be paying mileage and time for travel? That's their cost of doing business, okay? The fact of the matter is we paying for your hours to be here, period. And if you want to calculate your hourly rate, including your time and mileage and travel, put it in that bid. It's getting so complex, we don't know where we're going here. So I would say, I would make a recommendation to the board that we regroup this and spec it back to hours on scene.
Yes. You also consider, you have a 4-month project, how many work hours are in that project, and divide out, so you know he's coming 300 hours, he's out of a 500-hour project, and that's something to consider too. How many hours you're asking for, if you think you need, based on the length of the project. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does make sense, but it's also the part of the project where we need him there. It's not just, we need you here 2/3 of the time, we need you here
Right,
when
but
these things are
I would
happening.
guess you would figure out how many critical hours you may have anticipated. And then decide on.
We just spec it out where they come and they bid the hours for the critical mass, if you will, to look at the important aspects that truly need to be managed and have them bid that. They know what it is to, you know, I don't think it needs to, it's a lot of, when you start playing with numbers, you can hide a lot of stuff. And if you say, hey, you're all the same, you're all bidding on the same numbers, I think we get more realistic cost-wise, and you zero it in on who truly is, in fact, the low bid.
So is that $55,000 one plus mileage?
Yeah, and that 55,000 also is a whole 80 hours on the nose difference from, you know, time commitment. So I follow with your recommendation, Director Beard, and I think that we have to.
He's Director Beard.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Yeah,
That'd be fun.
Director Gambra, Bob, I'm sorry, you know what? I got lost in my thoughts, sorry about that. But I do think that we need to look at this in a little more detail. And do we have the, you know, just as a general question, can we put this back out to bid under a different terms and different bid, I guess you would say? How would we?
The board can reject all bids submitted and ask to go out for bid again. Am I correct, Mike? Yes.
And do we still have the time to reject and to go out to bid again?
I think we do, we have time,
I
right?
think we can always call a special meeting to approve these services as.
Well, we have a regular meeting.
And you know,
2 weeks, yeah.
at this aspect, we're so close, you make the time. At this point, you know, in life, I've found, and probably most of you the same thing, when something starts off wrong, a relationship, a job, a task, usually doesn't get better. But if you start something clean, you go into it, things can get in stride and work well. And I would like to see that we really look on both sides of the paperwork here. I think it's prudent that we do this as a board, that we kind of regroup and say, let's spec it out on these specific tasks in time or the hours. So we're all looking at 3 different bids or 5 different bids, and we know exactly they're going to be here X amount of hours each, and we can really see who in fact is the best value for our dollar, your dollar as a taxpayer, sir.
Okay, so we're gonna not vote on this, we wanna, or,
Well,
well,
what we're
vote
gonna do
to
is make
send
a
it
motion
back.
to reject all bids and.
I motion to.
Okay, well,
So, what we did do is we spec'd it out based off, all the requirements that we're asking for, and that's what each person bid on. And they said that this is how many hours we anticipate being there. Now, we could put a amount of hours into a bid, but obviously your bids are gonna, like Mr. Giamper saying is, firm A has $165 per hour, firm C is gonna have to come in and give their best hourly rates. And so I think that that's where we open it back up, where we come up with bids, hours to bid this product. Now, I do want to mention, if I did review this spec and had to figure out how many hours it would be, I would defer that to district engineer, who would have a greater understanding of that, would stand at that point to eliminate him from submitting a bid as well. So we may come back with 2 bids versus the 3. Do you agree with that assessment?
Well, and we did talk about this, if there was a problem with using Canon as project manager, but there's upside to it too,
But
so.
we already know these hours. They've already told, the lowest bid was what, 300 hours?
332.
332.
332. So we go for 300 hours, or we go for 330, or 335.
Can you
Okay.
do this task for X dollars in X amount of hours? Basically, yes or no. And you throw it on his desk and they say, yeah, we'll do it, or no, we won't.
Okay, Gary has a comment.
Okay, going back to Van Pelt, you've got 3 bids, you've got extras on top of the fee. Can't you figure out approximately, or even down to the penny, how much each of these contracts is gonna cost you based on mileage, food, blah, 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 above the fee? And then say, oh, this one that was low bid, now is actually the highest bid.
So,
And don't worry about the hours because they think they know what hours they need. Like I said, I've been involved in writing bids and stuff like that. And the low bidder is not always the low bid because they give you a bid, get the job, and then guess what? Lots of fees.
Yeah, it gets padded.
we'll include in this, when I send it out the second round, is ensuring that all costs are inclusive of mileage, estimated mileage based on your hours submitted. Or, but what I'll do is I'll go through all 3 bids as well and calculate what they're anticipating hours spent, how they drew out their bids, which are pre-construction, post-construction, throughout the construction, and kind of get an average of all 3 bids and say, this is how many hours we're anticipating. Now, again, a bidder will have to submit their bids based off of what we're requesting, but someone could say, you're saying you need 200 hours for post-construction, we're saying you're gonna need 220, or we only think you need 180, and they'll submit their, if it's less, then obviously it's gonna be better, but that's how I'll try to send out, solicit the bids this next time, is reviewing the bids that were submitted, try to compile some type of,
Average the hours.
average the hours that were submitted, and say, this is how many hours we're anticipating through these phases of the project. Also, we'd like your bid to be inclusive of any mileage and what are your supplemental charges, and can you include those as well?
Yes.
How long does that take?
It could take, I mean, to receive a fair amount, obviously we only received 3 bids, we might be down to 2. I can get those 2 to probably give you a quote within a week.
Oh, okay, so it's not like.
Because again, if I'm asking Mike to assist me in this project or compiling the bids, don't. I don't have to. I'll try to do my best to do this, but once I do involve him, it may eliminate him. And he's here tonight listening to this, but I know Mike is recusing himself and gonna make a fair submittal if we do reach out to them again.
Okay, so what we're looking for, and I think Director Redfern wanted to do it, is a motion to reject the bids for construction management and direct staff to,
Bring back bids at the June 16th meeting for construction management services.
okay? And did you want to make that bid, Director Redfern? Or I mean,
Make
that
that
motion?
motion.
Yes. So
It's
we
like
have a motion.
Director Jones said.
Okay, and do we have a second?
I'll make the second.
Okay, so we have a motion by Director Redfern and a second by Director DeAmber to reject all bids for the construction management and bring back construction management bids at the June 16th meeting.
Yes.
Okay, we'll do a roll call vote. Director Redfern?
Yes.
Director Van Pelt?
Aye.
Director Beard?
Aye.
Director Jones?
Aye.
Director DeAmber?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Didn't make it easier on you, but I'm glad we had that discussion because we need to look
Legitimate
at that.
concern and
Yes.
something that we'll investigate, and maybe we do save some money.
Or then we might get 2 or 3 higher bids.
Yes.
You always run the risk, huh?
I feel
Okay,
we're doing the right job for our constituents and making sure that we keep costs in line with what we've stated the costs are gonna be. And last meeting, right, we had some concerned citizens here that really pushed us to do a more thorough job of spending their money. So I think we're doing the right thing by delaying a few weeks and making sure that we have the right information.
I agree, and it's good to question this stuff because it's just like everybody's
Especially
doing
not- I
it.
don't think it's gonna delay us at all.
Well, that's a good point. Yeah, delay this decision, but not the project.
Delay the decision, but it's
Yeah.
not gonna delay the
Yeah.
project.
Well, is there anything else before we adjourn? Does anybody have any reporting of anything to do? Yes.
Just, kind of in line with all this stuff, I've been talking to some geotechnical consultants about compaction testing, so the area that's in the easements in the dirt, and that will be in backfill. So, I reached out to a few to get some quotes, kind of along the same topic as the last discussion is, how often, how frequently we want to have them out there. They are a similar type of contract, so when you need compaction testing, you call them up, they come out, it's a 2 to 6 hour day for them. It will be the same thing with the mileage and the hourly rates. They'll come out and they'll do the compaction testing, but we might want to get them all on the same page as far as how much we expect from them. So if we want to do it every 50 feet or every 100 feet or, maybe it's just a discussion between me and Jose to figure that out, but just kind of want to put that on the table because that's probably another $10,000 to $15,000 contract that needs to get awarded to geotechnical.
And is this, whether we do the slurry or not, whether we're required to do it?
So
Or
this is
Lewis.
only in the easement area, so.
This is not in the regulation.
Okay,
Yeah, any in the paved area, whether it's slurry.
I think I mentioned at the last board meeting that we did receive an initial compaction testing invoice from a local company, and that was in excess of $30,000 to do the whole project. But removing the street portion of it could drop it down to about $10,000.
okay. Anything else before we adjourn?
I just think the more that we have bulletins stating what we need, the, more clear that bid should be,
I'd rather have them all inclusive bid.
And we'll make sure we state that we want it all inclusive of traveling and any other fees that they anticipate charging this district.
Okay, well, if there are no further comments, I look for a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
Director Van Pelt made the motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Yay! Okay, so we have a motion and a second to adjourn, and it is, what is this?
6:59.
6:59, not bad, hour and a half.
We'll do a roll call vote though. Director Redfern.
Aye.
Director Van Pelt.
Aye.
Director Beard.
Aye.
Director Jones.
Hi,
Director DeAmbra.
Aye.
Motion passes.
thank you all for coming in. It's really getting done now. It's happening. It's more expensive and everything, but it's really happening.
Thank you.
It'll be good.
Sorry, David. Bob, right? I mean, I was lost in my thoughts. I was looking at you, Bob.
I've been called